and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry, I lost my place there. Okay, agenda item 2.04, review the agenda, and we've got a couple modifications. 6.03, we added the accounts payable vouchers, and we also removed one agenda item for the state Disney trip. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second that we approve the agenda as written. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, the agenda item has passed 5-0. Moving on to agenda item 3.01, student representatives. We have our student directors who will present a report highlighting student activities throughout this district. Who's first? Nathan.
All right, school's been fun. So to start off, last week we had our Veterans Day Assembly, which was a blast. We had the opportunity to hear from our wind ensemble, which is our top band, and also our a cappella and varsity choirs. And that's the first time they've performed in front of the entire high school this year, so that was fun. With sports, cross-country state went well. Girls soccer made it to state. Volleyball's in the finals, football is in state finals, and girls swim sent, I believe, 3 students to state, which is also awesome. Additionally, our Link Crew team, which is the group of upperclassmen plus sophomores, got together with freshmen in their homerooms during flex time, which is a half hour of work time per day. And they did a fun activity and talked about building school unity. And as a member of Link Crew, it was a blast, and varying results for different classes, but it was a good experience. And additionally, last meeting, I noticed that there was a big focus in the school district on greeting students in their classes. And so I decided that teachers greeting students at the door when students come in. So I've been watching for it, and I have noticed that it's definitely there, and it is actually really helpful for getting students engaged and ready to learn. So that's been fun. There's competition between teachers to greet the students in the most enthusiastic way possible on one day, so that was fun. And yeah, that's all for me.
Okay, stuff's been pretty good at Sky Valley lately. It's been super fun. The ACT program has been doing a lot of fundraising, and I've been basically in charge of the fundraising from the students part. And so this Wednesday, actually, we're doing a turkey fundraiser, and so it's a turkey dinner, and we're just fundraising for that. So that should be fun. A lot of times they're more like family activities than just the meal, but they're really fun. The high school robotics is in the competition, I think 2 weeks from Friday. So that's cool. And yeah, that's about it.
For reference, Sky Valley Robotics is really good.
Do we have any questions for Nathan or Laura?
I just have a comment. Congratulations, Nathan, on making it to state and representing the Bearcats in Pasco for cross country.
Thank you.
That's an awesome experience, and just so glad that you're able to partake in that and that your hard work paid off this year.
Thanks.
So, and yes, Laura, that Sky Valley turkey dinner, it's on the 16th. So this Wednesday, 11:30 to 12:45 for Sky Valley families. So make sure that you check it out. It's $5 per person and $20 per family.
Just one question, very important question. What is your favorite thing to eat at Thanksgiving?
Oh, that's gotta be those yams that you like cook really nice. They turn out nice and crispy with the marshmallows dribbled on top. That would be it.
Probably like mashed potatoes. I don't really know.
Both great choices. Very good choices. Thanks, you guys. Any other questions for Nathan or Laura? Okay, awesome. Thank you both. Okay, moving on to agenda item 3.02, audience comments. All comments during tonight's meeting are audio recorded and will be available online on our website. This is in addition to the written minutes. Please understand that while it may appear the board is moving quickly on important matters, there have been previous discussions on these issues either in earlier meetings or in board workshops, which are also open public meetings. Each director has had ample time to study the issues, ask appropriate questions, and obtain satisfactory answers from the superintendent, her staff, and through outside research. We welcome comments about school board and, school board and district decisions, processes, and concerns. Forms are available in the back of the room to sign up to speak and outlines the school board's process to do so. While the form outlines our procedure to audience comments, I will take a few minutes to remind everyone how this works. Each speaker has 3 minutes. However, if several are here on the same topic, a representative may be selected for the group and speak for 10 minutes. In doing so, the individuals in that group yield their time to their representative. It is important to note that a separate process exists for concerns about staff. Audience comments during the school board meeting is not the forum for staff complaints. If you are here for that reason, please see any staff member here in the room, and they will help you learn more about the staff complaint process. Be aware that if at any time during a speaker's comments their words begin to approach a personnel concern, I will remind the speaker once to keep comments centered on district or school board decisions, processes, and concerns. If that speaker continues with staff-related comments, I will give 30 seconds for the presenter to immediately sum up their thoughts and return to the audience. Again, any staff member in the room can help with how to move forward with a complaint about personnel. Okay, it looks like we have 4 audience comments tonight. And we will start with Cindy. You had a podium, Cindy. Okay, can I have you state your name and your relationship to the school district?
Yes, I am Cindy Ladd. I have 2 grandsons in Monroe Public Schools. I am speaking on behalf of a group. First, I'd like to thank the school board members who came out to wave signs with students and staff in support of the levy renewal. Director Johnson, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Love your dance moves too. At the last school board meeting, this board was addressed by a member of the public with a complaint about kids organizing a, quote, club for queers. Another parent asked if this type of behavior was to be permitted at the public school board meetings without comment or consequence, or if this directing body embraced it, a do as I say, not as I do stance. And 6 months ago, if we rewind, another mother stood before this board and told you that her children were regularly called monkeys and the N-word in the hallways of our schools. She and several other parents made an impassioned plea for this board to do something to protect their children. During those same 6 months, I've had dear friends who have actually sold their home and moved to another city to protect their son from bullying. It's not that they didn't complain about the bullying, they did, all the time. But as happens with bullies, and as bullies learn, people who are bullied eventually start reporting less and less because each time they find out that not that much is going to happen to the bully and their child is still going to be the target. I'm afraid we may be close to losing another valued family in our community for the same reasons. In each case, the bullying was reported again and again, and eventually, as the families of the victims realized that the bullying was not going to stop, the reporting tapered off, but the slurs continue. Yes, please. Thank you. Now, as you know, I come to all the meetings I can. If I'm not here in person, I'm on Zoom. And month after month, I hear a handful of people address the board about concern for, again quoting, fair-skinned people, Christian majority, and child grooming, as they complain about courageous conversations, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and social and emotional learning, all of which they shove under the label of CRT. Between school board meetings, they complain about those they believe are their oppressors, non-Christians, non-whites, and non-straights. Some of them even use terms directly: Jews, blacks, trans. Bullies are tenacious. They push and they push until they get the reaction they're looking for. I'm here to remind this board that just because you don't hear from the victims of bullies every school board meeting doesn't mean that the bullying has stopped or suddenly become acceptable. What are the consequences for the bullies? This board, well-intentioned, with concern for both state law and the social and emotional needs of the student who engages in bullying behavior, has adopted an intervention method that does little to protect the victims. Now, one of my grandchildren could end up being a bully someday. If and when that happens, I want there to be consequences. Without consequences, he won't learn from his actions. And without consequences, he'll bully again, escalating the behavior each time until someday someone forces him to stop. I understand how your hands are tied. State laws vary about what you can do with discipline and students. And times change where students' rights are concerned. I understand in Washington, it is codified that removal from school or expulsion is not an option, but perhaps there are other options of separating students who repeatedly offend from those who just want a decent education without fear. When I was an elementary educator in Florida, I participated in the homebound education program. Students who were unable to attend school in person got one-on-one education with a certified teacher for a set number of hours per week at the student's home. Now, I'm obviously not an attorney, but as yet I've found nothing in the RCWs that prohibit a student's free and public education being administered in their home environment, provided it meets the definitions of a least restrictive environment and protects potential classmates. This might be something for this board to consider. Investigate, have your lawyers investigate. Homebound education. It's an opportunity to get the bully, repeat offenders, of course, separated from their victims. Kids don't become bigots and bullies in a vacuum. Sure, kids can be very cruel to one another, but we provide consequences for inappropriate behaviors so children learn from their mistakes. However, as we regularly witness during the public comment section at school board meetings, there are plenty of adults who are absolutely positive that white superiority, Christian superiority, heterosexual superiority, and cisgender superiority are not only appropriate perspectives for themselves and their children, but that they should be applicable for everyone. They teach this view of the world to their kids, who in turn act this out in school, much like they see their parents do. Do any of us really think that making bullies apologize to their victim in person does anything other than re-victimize their target? Now, placing students who have repeatedly shown that they do not learn from in-school interventions into a homebound education program may cause enough inconvenience for the child's guardians that they will exert some effort to curb their own behaviors and attitudes, so their children will have more motivation to learn how to get along with people who don't look or worship or love the same way they do. At the very minimum, we would be providing a safer, more nurturing environment for kids we're attempting to protect from harm. I'm asking you, please consider the education of the victims as well as that of the bullies when you talk about the best way to intervene. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Can I please have Tanya come up? Tanya and Tammy. Okay, and can I have you state your names and your relationship to the school district?
Tanya Maines, I'm a teacher at Park Place Middle School. Tammy Kinney, I am a coach and substitute in the district, but we're both here representing the Monroe Historical Society tonight. Sure. Okay, so on Friday, we had a wonderful wreath laying ceremony at our Veterans Monument at Lake Tye. And we had Jeremiah there, and we had Molly there, and we were very happy to see them both. And we were asked to come present to you a little bit of history about the monument in Monroe, a little bit that you may not know about it. So I'm going to start by giving you a brief history of how the project started, and then I'm going to hand off the mic to Tanya Maines, and she's going to tell you about the student-led portion of the monument. So I don't know if many of you are aware, but in 1951, there was a monument erected at what was then Memorial Field. That's our old cinder track at the old high school on Kelsey Street. And this monument was long forgotten. It was behind a chain link fence, and it was originally erected to honor soldiers who had died in World War II that were Monroe residents. And this was something that locals knew about, people who had lived here a long time knew about it, but not many people knew about it. Many had forgotten about it. And I was a track coach at the time, and we were using that track, and we noticed it. A lot of the kids would say, "What is that?" I was also a member of the Monroe Historical Society at the time, and our then president, Beth Stucker, was very concerned that this had been a long forgotten monument, and it was never finished. The names of the missing soldiers were never added. There were 18 of them. And that's where Tanya and her students came in to the story. But we at the Historical Society decided to do something about this, and we ended up, it was a huge community effort. We had the Arthur Kincaid American Legion involved. We had many people in the community contribute funds to finish this monument. And we took the plaque that Tanya will tell you about and created a beautiful new monument that honors all veterans in the community. We're very proud of it. It was a joint effort with a lot of people. But the piece that will interest you the most is how Park Place Middle School students were involved. And so I'll let Tanya tell you about that. Thank you.
So it was around Veterans Day in 2014 or 13, I believe. And Tammy had written an article about the monument in the Monroe Monitor. And Dottie Simone and I saw that, and we said, okay, we have to right this wrong. So we got our students together, and about 20 students over the course of 2014, 2015, we spent time at the library, looking through microfiche. We spent time interviewing veterans at the museum. We spent time communicating across the sea because Henry Hooper, one of our soldiers, is still buried in the Netherlands. And I said France the other day because I was not, the mayor put me on the spot, so I didn't have my notes ready. In the Netherlands and in France, American soldiers that are still buried over there are taken care of by the people, the community. And so the student, Alex McCartney, actually got in contact and talked to the grave tender that takes care of Henry Hooper's grave. And so they communicated back and forth through email, and some pictures were sent and whatnot. The students talked to family members in California. And it just became a very prideful thing for the kids. They were excited. They kept saying, when are we gonna work again? Can we go on Saturday? Can we? And so I can't remember, I don't know how many hours outside of school we spent on this, but it was one of the best projects that I've been involved with, just to see the kids take ownership. As it moved forward, we did the groundbreaking ceremony, and I didn't realize that the mayor was still laying a wreath there every Veterans Day and every Memorial Day. So that's something that's going to be back on my docket to be in, and I'm going to contact our students that were involved and see if I can get all of those kids to start coming back, because they've graduated, they're off all over the place doing great things. But if they can get back to Monroe for Memorial Day or Veterans Day, then I want them at Lake Tide to participate in that. Did I miss anything?
Just maybe mention that the original bronze plaque is at
Oh yeah, so there was a concrete or cement obelisk at Memorial Field, and on the top was just a plain bronze plaque. It said, "This is dedicated to the soldiers who gave their lives in World War II," or something to that effect. We took that piece of the original monument, remounted it into the new marble, beautiful. On each branch of the service is honored on the side of the monument. The names of the men are on the back of the monument, and then we have the flag, the American flag and the POW flag. It's lit up at night, and it's a pretty cool thing.
Look at all the names of the fallen, and there's also Park Place Middle School is on the monument as well, the work that they did. So I think Jeremiah will be correct in assuming that a lot of people didn't know about this. That's why the mayor every year for the the ceremony put a key to his vote on the spot. And a golden retriever of the
Yeah.
but it's really an important story, and I hope it all. Hopefully, we'd like to involve more school students and teachers.
One other thing, Snohomish County did award the project the Snohomish County Stewardship Award, and so there's a crystal. I think there's one at there's one at Park Place for sure. There's one at the Historical Society, and then I think there's one at the City Hall to honor all the people that. And we went to a ceremony in Everett at the courthouse, and then we were at the fair, and they presented us, and we had a lot of the kids there that day too. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tanya and Tammy. Okay. And up next, we have Melanie. Melanie, your name and your relationship to the school district.
You all know me by now, but I am Melanie Lockhart, and I'm a parent in this district. I have 2 kids currently attending, and then their little brother will be there eventually. But for the past few months, I have been an active part of the Citizens Committee to help get this levy passed. And obviously, as of latest counts, it is confirmed that the levy has passed, so we have it renewed for the next 4 years. And so I want to take time to first and foremost thank the voters of this community. I know that this is still a decently split issue, so not discounting the people who voted no on this, but I'm thankful for the voter turnout. We had the highest turnout in the entire county. So just the amount of people who came out to exercise their right to vote is huge. So I want to say thank you to all the voters who turned out and let this district know how they feel on the matter. I also want to thank the countless volunteers. We had board members in their off time, staff in their off time, but then community members, parents, just people from all backgrounds that stepped up to help spread the word about the levy, have discussions in various places to just help get it supported in different capacities. And so I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who was involved in that. And then also to this district, because not only does this levy benefit, obviously, first and foremost, the kids and the staff and the community as a whole, because investing in our schools is a big deal. To me, it's the most important thing that we can do. But I think that this vote and just the change and the flip-flop from February compared to now just shows that this district has taken time to listen to this community, listen to the voices to help kind of rebuild some of the trust that has been lost over the years. I'm confident that you all recognize there is still much work to be done. But I want to say just overall thank you for the progress that is being made, for the progress that will continue. And I'm looking forward to, what's next on the list of things to do in the community. So I just wanted to say, ultimately, thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Melanie. Okay, and that is it for public comments. Okay, agenda item 3.03, we have staff recognition, employees of the month for October. The MSD Honor Roll recognizes employees for exemplifying Monroe School District's commitment and shared values through their service to our students, staff, families, and community. Anyone can nominate any staff member. All nominees are recognized each month with a certificate and in a news post on the website. In addition, one employee in each of the 3 employee categories, classified, certificated, or administrator, are selected as the MSD Honor Roll Employee of the Month. Monthly award recipients are selected by the Superintendent's Executive Cabinet. 21 employees were nominated in the month of October, and the following 3 employees were selected as the October MSD Honor Roll Employees of the Month.
All right, I get the honor of starting us off talking about an extraordinary woman who's given so much to this district and who I have the privilege of personally knowing. She was the very first face that I saw when I entered Sky Valley, uncertain of what the educational future of my oldest son would be. And she listened and heard and was there. And she helped me through the process, which at the time seemed like Mount Everest. So I am absolutely thrilled to be able to start off the honoring with Maggie Jacobs, who is the registrar at Sky Valley Education Center. One of the nominations for Maggie says, Maggie has been with the district since 1992. She has been in this current role for 17 years. She's one of the biggest assets Sky Valley Education Center has. Maggie makes sure each student and family feels welcomed. She spends a lot of time explaining the ins and outs of our amazing, unique school. She will sit down with families to go over different programs and options, patiently explaining all the rules and regulations. Maggie spends so much time giving excellent customer service to our teacher, staff, students, and families. Maggie Jacobs is a treasure to Sky Valley Education Center and MSD.
I have the privilege of reading her second nomination because there's 2 here. And just as a personal note, my son was dealing with some major bullying issues, and we were looking at alternatives for where he was enrolled within the district. And so I looked at Sky Valley, and it was overwhelming at the options because it's very different and the way that it works. And Maggie was the first face that I also saw, very calming effect, and it really helped me understand things and took a lot of time. And I was figuring I'll just get in, I'll get information and get out. And she sat down with me and explained things calmly and clearly and didn't let me go until I knew that she knew that I understood it, and that meant a lot. And this nomination says Maggie is magnificent. Her ability to organize and process the reports and requests she needs to complete on a weekly basis is amazing. In addition to her compassion, warmth, and sincerity, she welcomes new families to Sky Valley and is a true gift that we all treasure. She is thorough, knowledgeable, and attentive, and makes sure that each family has an opportunity to hear about a program that best meets their needs. While she is offering each family hope, she is managing all the details related to student record keeping, answering the phone, and keeping our student management system accurate and updated. She is a master at her job, and we all rely on her expertise each and every day. You are a superstar, Maggie. That described my experience with her as well. I did not write this, though.
It's my honor to recognize the Certified Employee of the Month, Andrea Vi. She's a teacher at Frank Wagner Elementary. Oh. Oh. Although Andrea is a building mentor for new staff, she has taken on more than most of us, taken on more of us than she could handle. She has helped us with the district, school, teaching things to help us acclimate to the new job and school. She has not once complained about the extra work that has likely been created for her. She is always willing to lend an ear, give advice, or help us troubleshoot a problem. She has made me feel more welcome and supported than I ever have in the district, and she doesn't have to. So note, I'm not one of the assigned mentees. Her commitment to helping staff achieve their goals in order to help our staff and students succeed should be commended. Thank you.
Okay, and I get to read about our Administrator of the Month, Joe Nigel. He is the Director of Prevention Services at the District Administration Office. Joe continues to be an amazing advocate for our students in the district. He is the most in touch with their needs as he collaborates so closely with the staff serving on the front line by listening. He is always coming up with positive ways to restructure some of our most challenging situations. And I can echo that nomination. I've known Joe since I was in school for a social and human services degree back in 2015. And he and I have gotten to work together outside of Monroe School District and supporting the community. He is somebody who truly cares and spends so much of his time finding ways to support our students and community as a whole. I think Monroe School District has a lot of resources and connections within the community because of Joe. Much appreciation to him.
Okay, thank you so much again to our staff, our amazing, brilliant, loving, encouraging staff. Andrea, you almost had me tear up. That was really beautiful. That was really beautiful. Thank you for being here and for allowing us to honor you in such a public way. And thank you so much again, just for being amazing and awesome. Well deserved. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Moving on to agenda item 4.01, we have the HYA Hazard Young Atea and Associates presentation, and we have Chris here. Is John joining us now? Okay, we have Chris here to represent HYA and provide an update of the superintendent search. Thanks,
Good
Chris.
evening. Good evening. That is a tough act to follow. This is, you have so many amazing staff members, students, and this community. Getting to know it over the last several months has just been an honor. So again, my heartfelt congratulations also on the passage of the levy, a huge undertaking by so many people. So way to go. Just providing you a very brief update about how things are going with the superintendent search. I wanted to remind everyone that there are 4 distinct phases to the search, and we are knee-deep in the first 2, which is engagement and recruitment, and just wanted to share a couple highlights. Starting with the fact that over the last several weeks, we've been meeting with individuals and small groups. We're up to 69 as of this afternoon, individuals that we have talked with about the process and about the timeline, and definitely great conversations about what they're looking for in the next superintendent, what they're hopeful for the school district and the community. And they have just been so frank and open, and it's been so much appreciated. We have several more to go over the next few weeks, and including our student board reps, and trying to make sure that all student voices are heard in the process as well. Reaching out in the next few weeks to the rest of the staff, our teachers, our classified staff, the principals, all staff will have an opportunity. So a lot more to go, but just wanted to give you a quick update. You know that Wednesday night we have a community forum, and we appreciate Erin and her team getting the word out We hope for a good turnout. We're offering it both in person and via Zoom for folks to listen in and provide their feedback. So we very much appreciate that opportunity as well. And then also in engagement, the thought exchange that we had agreed on was launched last Thursday and is open until the 23rd. And Erin reported this afternoon that there are already 100 folks who are weighing in. And she's going to send out several more reminders in the upcoming days to get a very thorough exchange. So stay tuned. We'll be reporting back on the summary of all of this engagement. The individuals, the small groups, the thought exchange, the community forum, that will all come together in a report to you. And just a reminder, that's where we seek a leadership profile that you are going to prioritize to help with the selection process. So really great progress there. Also wanted to report that obviously recruitment has been going on simultaneously. We've had outreach by just short of 20 individuals. I think it might have hit 20 today. And some individuals reaching out to us who are very interested. As of this afternoon, there are actually 2 completed applications, and that's really, really early. So there's a lot of movement. And again, the closing date being January 3rd. So we're really, really hopeful. For the third phase, the select phase, the only thing I wanted to mention there is how critical it is that we nail down and are able to report out the interview dates. And so I didn't get a chance to confirm with Dr. Larson, but we are holding January 20 for semifinalists and the 27th for finalists. And just wanted to check in with you, sort of last call, so that we'd be able to work forward from here. Any conflicts on either of those 2 dates, or Dr. Larson, anything else to add about that?
Can you repeat those dates one more time?
Yes, January 20 and January 27, and that would be most of the days, both days.
You're saying January 20 and not or.
Right.
You need both.
Semifinalists and then the finalists. And won't put you on the spot here, but I'll ask Dr. Larson to please follow up with us, hopefully in the next day or so that we can nail those down. And when we start to talk to candidates, we sure want to be able to say, you know, hold those dates. You've got to be able to get here and participate if you're really interested. So on that, I wanted to just open it if you had any other questions for me at this time.
So one of our WASDA trainers told us that you can never take your school board hat off. I was approached at the gym this morning when I was all sweaty by a teacher asking questions about this. And they wanted to know, and I said, I will ask tonight at the board meeting. So this is on behalf of one of our amazing teachers in our district. On the Wednesday night forum that you guys are going to hold, is that a time that's more a presentation or a time where community members and staff members can come and ask questions?
The latter. We will provide a quick overview of process and timeline. Just want people to understand the context and what they can expect moving forward. But it's a discussion and contribution if they're comfortable, but there will be multiple ways to provide their feedback. But absolutely.
Awesome. I had one second thing. I was at a WASDA training last month, and I'll talk more about that in my board comments, but I was sitting at a table with other board directors, and we are not the only ones looking, you guys. We are ahead of the game, but barely, because they were talking about it, and some are using you guys, and some are using other people. But we need to stay ahead of the game because there's a lot of people looking out there, and they're in our backyard. So I appreciate the diligence that you guys have put on this, and just even in our process of finding Dr. Larson, I know you about made Chuck's head spin about how fast you moved. He couldn't believe you could move that fast in public education. Speed of business. So I appreciate that about your diligence. Thank you for that. And as you guys are keeping us updated in the process. So I'm glad that we're ahead of the curve right now.
had a question about so the semifinalists and then the finalists. So how many would be in the semifinalists and then the finalists? It's probably 2 or 3 in the finalists.
It's going to vary, and we're going to work diligently with you on determining that. So when we bring to you the slate of all completed applicants, that's when we'll be talking with you about, is there a natural cutoff at 6 or 8? Do you don't see a natural cutoff, you need to push it to 10? You know, it's very flexible based on the quality of the pool and your interests. So we can work that out and schedule accordingly. So typically, though, it would be 6 or 8 at semifinalists, and then whittling that down to most likely 3, maybe 4. We do coach against, you know, only 2 applicants because so many things can happen. If there's someone that pulls out or is in another, you know, candidacy somewhere else, it's a little safer to go with 3, but we will determine that with you as we go.
I also got a question from a community member.
Great.
Just about the email that went out for the thought exchange. There was a portion in there that talked about if you don't have an opportunity to participate in a listening session or the public forum, please fill out this form. And so the question was, well, if I attend the forum, does that mean I shouldn't fill out the thought exchange?
Right, I was going to talk with Erin about that. It was on my list and I missed it, Erin. Yes, we really do want to clarify that. We want people to attend all of the above and participate in all of the above. So if they were in a listening session small group, you know, please come to the forum if you have anything else you want to add or share. And thought exchange should be really open to everyone, and please participate, whether you were in a listening session or the forum or not. So we'll work together on clarifying that in her reminders that go out. Please participate in all of the above. Thank you.
I do want to echo what Director Campbell said. We do have a few neighboring school districts who are also looking and who are calling for references as well. And I kind of wanted to be selfish, but I did the decent thing.
You are top of our list.
Thank you. I really appreciate
it.
I should have said, oh, no, awful. Worst experience ever. Nope.
You're our priority right now. How's that? And we so appreciate working with all of you. You've been so accommodating and responsive, and we're looking forward to moving forward in the next few months.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 6 p.m. I am going to call a quick 5-minute recess. I will not be returning. Director Campbell will be taking over for me to end the night. I have to head to class, so it's a good excuse. See, kids, go to school. Yeah. Thank you so much, Director Campbell, for that. And we'll go ahead and start now. 5 minutes. My own motion, I move to take a 5-minute recess.
I second that motion.
There's a motion. All in favor, raise your hand. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
We were also having to go to the bathroom and talk, so. You ready, Director Barnes? Yep. All right, we're gonna continue on as President Bumpus has stepped out for the rest of the meeting. Next item on our agenda is 4.02, end of year budget. Hi, Brenda. The floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So this is actually the end of year update, and it is to provide the board with a very brief overview of where we ended last year. 21-22. So this is through August 22nd, and what is reflected on the F-196 that was submitted to the budget, to the OSPI at the end of October, on October 26th. So I have to do this, don't I? There we go. So the first thing we're going to cover is our enrollment. As you know, the enrollment drives is processed through the prototypical funding model, and it drives our apportionment from OSPI. And so this first slide reflects our enrollment relative to our budget. If you jump to the very bottom line, you see that overall, we had 20 students less than what we budgeted. However, the demographics of how we budget students, there were some variances, which is normal. In our elementary schools, we were up 180 students from what we budgeted. That's really good. It's good to have growth in the elementary school because that begins to move through the whole school system. The highest percentage of variance was at the kindergarten level. Kindergarten is a real guessing game because we don't have anything to tell us how many 4-year-olds are out there waiting, or 5-year-olds that are waiting to go to kindergarten. At the middle level, we were 12.47, so 12.5 FTE above what we had anticipated last year. The high school, we were down 73 students from what we had projected. So the net for our traditional buildings is we were up 119 students from what we had projected. ALEs, same differences between the two ALEs, and we were off by 1.43 FTE at the ALEs. Our other programs, which consist of out-of-district SPED, those are districts that get their education at institutions that aren't Monroe School District, at other facilities. And our youth re-engagement program and our Shoreline Community College program. And we were down 108.79 FTE at those two programs. As you know, those two programs were discontinued beginning at the beginning of this school year. So when we do our enrollment report, and you see past history, you'll see that our enrollment in ALEs dropped, and it's predominantly because of those two programs are no longer being counted. So district total, including Running Start, is 20.02, down. Any question on enrollment? General fund. Too many buttons here. General fund, this first provides our sources of revenue and what the variance is. This is relative to the budget extension that we did in March and not to the budget that was adopted last August. There's a variety of variances here. I wanted to point out that the $4.6 million in federal special purpose money is actually not down $4.6 million. When we did our budget extension, I had explained to the board that we were receiving, at that time, I anticipated $4 million of enrollment stabilization. And I had said we were reserving that for the 22-23 fiscal year. However, they changed the rules just a little bit. And what that meant, what the rules said is that at year end, we could not have that $3.6 million in our fund balance. And so what we were required to do on August 31st is move it to an unearned revenue GL account, a general ledger account. And then it became revenue on September 1st. So for one 24-hour period, it was in unearned revenue, and then it became revenue on September 1st. So what that means ultimately, and you'll see that later in this presentation, is that rather than ending with the fund balance that we had projected, we are lower because we took that $3.6 million out. And at the end of 22-23, we will still, our budget still projects us to be at that 7 million that we had anticipated when we had our budget extension. Because we're projecting 14 million and the board had authorized the use of 7. So what moving that resources meant for this district is that we are using half of that in 21-22 and the other half next year in 22-23. Does that make sense? We'll see it later.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
By moving the 3.6 million that we can't keep in our fund balance and roll over in the next year, by moving it over to the general ledger, does that apply any other restrictions on those funds, or are they just the same restrictions from the dollars that we received? Does that change anything?
No.
Okay.
The reason why it was moved out of fund balance is because federal dollars has this interest. You can't gain a lot of interest on your money. And so they didn't want us to reflect it in our fund balance as interest earning revenue. So they wanted us to book it as a liability, as unearned revenue, and then account for it as revenue in the new year. Does that make sense? Kind of, yeah. So that was a little switch that they did, quite frankly, at the beginning of this year. They told us that in September. So it kind of changed the plan a little bit, but the money didn't go away. It's still part of the money that we had planned to use in 22-23. It just makes our year ends look differently. The state special purpose, the extra 603,000 is primarily state grants. And it is competitive grants for the most part. So I wanted to point out that this past year, the district did a really good job at going out for BEST grants, for TPEP grants, for the WA Kids, for kindergartners grants, competitive grants like the Student Grad Rate Grant for $35,000 that Leaders in Learning applied for and received. It included the national board certification, so that's more money because more of our teachers are becoming national board certified, and our paraeducator certification, and more of our paraeducators are attending the 14 hours of mandatory training, and so that pot of money to the district is more. Next slide is non-traditional revenue. So this is revenue that is rocking our world for the last couple years that makes all of our numbers look differently. And so I wanted to make sure that the board is aware that these are revenues that the district has received. Some of them are partially expended, some of them are not touched. But it includes that enrollment stabilization. As you can see, it was $3.68 million. None of it has been spent, and it became revenue again on September 1st, and that is budgeted to be spent in 22-23. The Emergency Connectivity Fund, we had round 1 and round 2 in the 21-22 fiscal year. Those were spent exclusively on technology and technology-related things like power supplies and things. So that was 100% technology related. We had the American Recovery Plan BEST grant, that's for beginning support for beginning teachers that we applied for, and we have a little bit of carryover. We have the Homeless Child and Youth Grant, also American Recovery. We have that in the budget for this year to spend. We have American Recovery in both preschool, special education, and K-12 education. And preschool is still carrying over the full amount. And we spent a little over half for 21-22. The balance will be spent this year. The ESSER dual language program. We received $200 to implement a new or updated program here at Monroe School District, and that is planned to be spent this year. ESSER 3, that's 80% of our ESSER 3 dollars. And when we received 3 years of ESSER dollars a few years ago, we spent ESSER 1 in the very first year. We spent ESSER 2 in the second year, and our plan was to spend ESSER 3 in the third year. This is the third year. And so it's budgeted for 22-23. And then ESSER 3, the 20% that's targeted for learning recovery, we have $487,908 left as of the end of August. And so as you can see, this is $8 million worth of federal dollars that are one-time dollars, meaning they're one and done. So that means that anything that we have that's ongoing expenditures for that are being spent with these dollars, we'll have to look at how we're funding them in the future. It also means, honestly, that we'll probably have to do another budget extension this year to make sure that we have the capacity to spend these dollars in 22-23, or a plan to move them forward. So we'll talk about that as the year progresses. The passage of the levy will change some of our conversations moving forward. And so we'll have to again consider this $7.9 million in light of the levy for this year and what our plan is moving forward. Revenue by source. This is just to show you in illustration what our revenues are. As you can see, the green is our basic ed, our state revenue. The light blue is the tax revenue. And as you can see, our levy amount is historically around 14%. And this is greater because, again, the way we got our students and the way our state revenue has gone down, our federal revenue hasn't gone up by as much. So it's a percentage of the total budget that technically the revenue has gone down. Revenue trends, this shows you how we are relative to our, relative to our historical values. And again, you can see our state revenue has gone down. That's predominantly due to catching up with McCleary. And it has to do with our demographics of our students. And for example, if you have more CTE, you get more in that area, but you get less in Gen Ed. But our state has gone down. Our state special purpose is our LAP, our transitional bilingual, our transportation, our special education. So those areas have all gone up. Federal has gone up because of all the federal ESSER and American Recovery Plan dollars that we've spent. And so we will anticipate a higher number than normal for the 22-23 year as well. And revenues from other are predominantly increased revenue from the community coalition grants and the way that we're spending our community coalitions grants. So that's essentially that increase in that revenue. Next slide are percentage to totals. And again, you can see that the state percentage to total has gone down while the federal special purpose has gone up. Local taxes, 15.47%. And that is, again, lower budget, but it's also folks were catching up on their taxes. If I flip back to the tax revenue relative to budget, we had actually collected more than we thought we would because some of the past due taxes were paid. And that may have been paid by developers or the sale of homes. And so the taxes have to be caught up on. Any questions on revenue?
Yes.
Okay,
I nerd out on numbers, Brenda.
that's okay.
So on the slide that is the 21-22 revenue trends, it connects to a couple of things that you mentioned. One, with the levy looking as it's passing, one of the priorities I would love to see of us getting ready for conversations moving forward is, we authorized the spending of an extra $7 million out of our reserves for that. And so looking at how either we won't have to spend that or replenishing that as well, because we're not going to have to go into quite as much of a conserve mode, because our conversation that we had earlier with our state senators and state reps that were here, one of the things that rang in my ears was, and Senator Hawkins mentioned that state funding for public education comes primarily through state sales tax. And those numbers are looking as though they're decreasing, which will affect what state funding we will be giving. So when you look at the state general line on here, it's in this for the 2018-19 all the way to the 2021 numbers, it's right around hovering just below and above 61 million. And then last year it's 55, almost 56 million. You see what I'm looking at? Okay. So we have a huge drop there, and I'm wondering if that's going to be, that same line item is going to be directly affected or at least correlate with a drop in sales tax. What I'm looking at is, as the waters settle post-COVID type things, are we going to have a drop in revenue? And so it's even more important to us to look at replenishing those reserves that we've used just in case the levy did not pass. And those are conversations and priorities I would love to look at, so that if we have a drop in state funding, we're still building a buffer enough that we can make sure that our students and our staff are funded the way they need to be with our dollars on hand. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm hoping to not fall into the same trap that a lot of our districts are facing now, whereas folks are secure with their levies. However, they're still having to make budget cuts because they're falling off the ESSER funding cliff, because they've reached that cliff before we have. And so I'm hoping that through the next several years of budget processing, we align ourselves with the revenue that we are receiving and using the ESSER dollars and the special dollars for one-time expenditures that can easily be eliminated from our budget, one and done. But those are conversations, like I said, we're just starting to wrap our heads around the fact that the levy passed. And so we've talked about the fact that we have to have conversations on what that means for the district now, not only for 22-23, but in our future years, to avoid that cliff where we have to make major reductions in a single year. And so those conversations will start. We just haven't done it yet. But that's my goal, is to level out. Districts statewide, including ours, took a big enrollment hit, which is driving the lesser revenues as well. And we don't know where the kids have gone, but it seems to be statewide. And so we not only have to deal with our cost exceeding what we're getting from the state, but also align really closely with what our enrollment is. And projecting what enrollment is or will be is difficult. And so there's always variances.
That's your specialty.
But there's always variances.
What was our total enrollment difference? 20 students?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like crystal ball accuracy.
Well, it's still in wrong categories. So anyway, yes, we have to keep our eye on the ball as a team. Any other questions on revenue? Now our expenditures. I presented this by object. First, this is primarily how we all perceive our budget. Our salaries and benefits. Again, this is related to our budget extension that we did in March, not the budget that we passed in August. But it goes by salary and benefits, supplies, purchase services, travel, capital outlay, and capacity. That's how our budget is divided. And the purchase services is much higher than what we had projected. And I'm sure you all know why, but I will say it. We had duplicate payments for staff members, key staff members. We were paying 2 people to be superintendent. We were paying 2 people to be an HR director. We had increased legal fees. And so aggregately, that is what pretty much amounts to that $1 million plus. And a lot of budgets were less than anticipated, so this number was probably higher. But it nets to 1.1 million that we were over in purchase services. Capital outlay is higher than we had anticipated, and that is essentially 3 areas, if I recall correctly. One was that we spent a very small percentage in buying a fingerprint machine using ESSER dollars for the district office, and that was an attempt to be able to fingerprint our own new employees so that they wouldn't have to wait for COVID to pass to go find somebody else that would fingerprint them. So that was approved by OSPI for us to purchase, which has proved to be a very good purchase. So we bought the fingerprint machine, and the other large expense for that was a Sky Valley playground. The playground was essentially purchased in the 2021 year, but because of COVID, it was not installed and they did not receive all the pieces. And so that carried over to the 21-22 school year. And so the playground was installed, and so it was primarily the residual cost for the playground, which was a good expense. So those are the 2 that are overspent. Any questions on that?
I have a quick question, and I'm really glad you brought the 18% is what I have like redlined all over my notes and understanding where the purchased services. So where would you expect it to fall when we don't have all those extra services or paying people doubly? And then I was also curious if part of the purchase services are due to staffing issues that we've had where we're having to bring in service providers instead of being able to employ them within the district.
Yes, that's all. We always pay. Our normal purchase services go, well, for the 21, 22 and earlier, our biggest purchase services went to Shoreline Community College and Everett Community College. So moving forward, I would expect for purchase services to decline by a few $1 million, $2 to $3 million, just because of that. And then our purchase services pays for all the contractors that come in that are not our employees, but they're working on our behalf for all of our programs. And our purchase services pay for professional development for the most part if we bring contractors in or we go out to a conference. That's also a purchase service. Those are the key areas for our purchase services. Yes, and our services attorneys, Chartwells.
I appreciate Sarah bringing that up because I kind of want to piggyback. If there's looking at, as we plan for our future budget, if you can bring us some estimated costs of what that would look like, even if we're looking at pre-COVID numbers type of a thing, not necessarily in dollar amounts, but in percentages of the budget, because I think that might give us a more accurate number. I mean, this is your area, so I don't want to overstep into that, but That I think would really help as well, because we're not walking through firestorm legal issues necessarily as much. We're now steady with, we will be steady with our superintendent process and all of that. And again, as the water's calm, what does that look like in our projection? Those types of things moving forward are things that I'm really interested in seeing to help us navigate that future.
Well, I can provide a really good historical amount, and I can provide what we spent each year for purchase services. However, decisions we make for the budget moving forward drives what that dollar amount will be. If there's reductions, then we would expect it to be lower, but I can at least give us a launching point. And I'm going to do a really bad plug here, so sorry. I'm hoping to start asking for people for my budget advisory committee in December so that we can target our first meeting in January. And I would like at least one board member to join me in that. So keep your eye out so somebody that's interested, and then you can get all the information and you can share. Okay? My plug. So, got to catch up on mine. So this slide is by activity, and the way Monroe School District historically has broken up our activities are schools, school support, and administrative. And schools went up from 78 million to 86 million. School support, 7.9 million to 7.6, so we went down in school support. And admin went up, again, for pretty much the same reasons we've already talked about. Schools are 87.5% of our total budget, school support 7.7, and admin 4.8% of our total budget. I skipped a few of the object slides. Any questions on this slide?
Yeah, what were the rough amounts for the school expenditures per year before we had our levy, like in 2016, before?
Well, we've always had a levy, and the levy has changed over time, but it's usually, historically, when I first got here in 2013, it was roughly 12% of our budget, and now this was an odd year, so it's hard to say, so I'll say between 14 and 15%, but it's usually about 14%. And as you know, our budgets vary.
Yeah.
So if you look at the bottom line for the amount of revenue that we have and look at 12% for the first year and 14% for last year, then you'll get the dollar amounts for.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And if you want to know, I can email it to you, but you're bright.
Cool.
So. But very good question. Any other questions on this slide? This is general fund summary, and I want to point out again that this reflects the ending fund balance as 9.5 million. We talked about it being closer to 14 million. And so what this did is our ending fund balance is 9.5 million. If you add back in that 3.685, we were at 13.2. We are using enrollment stabilization of 3.685 for this year. And we budgeted to end fiscal year to use 3.365 of fund balance next year, which is 6.87 million. So we stayed below the $7 million threshold that was authorized by the board.
I have a question on this one. Just about, I don't know if I'm reading if I'm understanding what I'm looking at. So there's this page, or this slide that has the general fund at 9.5, and then in the financial statements, the F196 on page 2, it has ending total fund balance as 17 million.
No,
Okay, what am I looking at on the
Oh.
other?
I'll show you.
Okay,
Yeah. No, our ending fund balance is 9.522, and I don't know. Let me pull it up. Be easier if I walked over there. Is that?
I've got it up. Let me come show you. Thank you. Camera, follow me.
This is it, 9.522 right here. This is general fund.
I'm just looking at all of these. Yeah, that's why. Thank you.
So what was being looked at was the aggregate fund balance of all of our funds and not just the general fund. So that's an easy mistake to make. The auditors make that mistake almost every year.
Speaking of auditors, there are some issues that they did bring up. Are we addressing those from our last audit? There was like 2 things that they brought up in our last audit. Was it July?
I know that one has been addressed and the plan has been accepted. I think we're still waiting for the second plan acceptance. And that's not regarding finances. It's more about
Procedures.
basic education compliance and, yeah. So we're still, I haven't got a document saying that plan's been accepted yet. Way to throw us off task, Jeremiah. All right, general fund balance. Our fund balance, as you know, is broken up into various categories. The restricted for carryover restricted revenues, that's in the event that we have revenues that we received this year that were unspent. And we have CTE dollars that remain unspent, however, significantly less than we had last year. We have, I believe, highly capable, I'm guessing, highly capable dollars that were unspent, and grant dollars. We did a really good job of spending down our state resources this year. Non-spendable fund balance is essentially our inventory and our prepaids. So at the end of July and August, we start receiving bills for like Solution Tree conferences that have to be paid in advance, or things that in the normal sequence, we get the bill in August. And so we have a few prepaids, but not a lot. Most of this is our commodities inventory left over at year end. And so I get a report from Kelly at the end of every school year that essentially itemizes what's in inventory. And so that makes up that non-spendable fund balance, because technically it's already been spent. So we have to save it for when it shows up as expenditures the following year. Assigned to other purposes, that is like building carryover, that is carryover that is made available due to contracts, CPAs, like professional development. That's carryover for program costs that were left unspent, not donations, but teacher grants and things like that that are booked at the buildings. And so and uncompensated absences, we take a percentage of the vacation and sick leave and things that that our employees have on the books. And we put a percentage of that in there in the event that everybody leaves. But that's not because we believe people will leave, it's because the auditors recommend it. So that's part of that assigned to other purpose. Unassigned to minimum fund balance, that's the board member policy. I'm trying to move us beyond that, Molly. Just slide right through that. Unassigned to minimum fund balance, that's of course the board policy. Yeah, the board policy currently is 5% plus $1,115,000. And so that actually ends up being 6.2% of our fund balance is reserved there. And then the unassigned fund balance is the money that we have left over in fund balance that does not fall into any of the other categories. And so that is 0.8% of our total fund balance. And this is relative to revenues. If you go out and look at anything related to OSPI, it's always a percentage of expenditure, so those will never match ours. Again, a pie chart reflecting what our expenditures look like. The big blue is our non-spendable fund balance. The next largest is the green, and that's our assigned, and the next smallest is 8.5 for our unassigned fund balance. Yet another way to look at the same information, unassigned fund balance is 62% of our total fund balance, and the smallest is the non-spendable fund balance. And that completes the general fund. Any questions on the general fund? The next ones are really easy. Capital Projects Fund. Trending of our Capital Projects Fund. Capital Projects Fund is used to house all the dollars that we receive from capital levies and the money that we receive up front when we sell bonds. Its purpose is to pay for either what our bond purposes were or what our capital levy purposes were. At the end of the calendar fiscal year, we had $2.65 million left. And the breakout for the fund balance in capital projects, of that $2.6 million, $22,564 are capital levy dollars. $533,170 is our remaining state match dollars from the three major projects we had, and $1.9 million is mitigation dollars. And mitigation dollars are dollars that we use to increase classroom size or space. And so typically these are used to offset costs of building. They're used to buy portables, move portables, that kind of stuff, anything that will be used to house students. Our assigned to fund purpose or our unassigned fund balance is $165,000 for a total of $2.65 million.
Just one quick clarification. So the restricted mitigation fees, those would be the ones that are specifically used only for housing students, and we have a certain amount of time in which to use those. Is that right? Do I remember that correctly from the redistricting?
That is correctly, and we report annually on how we use those resources. They have to align with our capital facilities plan, and for the last capital facilities plan, there was really nothing in there that we could align our purchases with, but it was just redone. And so things were taken into consideration that would help us use these resources. Debt service fund. This is the fund that we use to when we levy our bonds at budget time. Essentially, we collect from our taxpayers enough to pay for our principal and interest for the year that we're heading into. So when we adopted the 22-23 budget, we certified or approved an amount to be collected to meet our debt and principal and interest payments for calendar year 23. And so we keep enough in this fund balance of the debt service fund to, in order to aggregate enough to pay those bills in June and December. And at some point in the year, our fund balance has to dip below 1/12 of our prior year's debt service obligation. And that's typically December when we have both principal and interest payments. ASB fund, ASB fund are the budgets that are primarily at the secondary level, budgeted and controlled by the students with their advisors. Every building has an ASB with the exception of Leaders in Learning. And again, the student council at the secondary level typically puts together the budget, approves all expenditures, and with adult advisors. Elementary schools, typically it's the principal, but depending on the age and the event, kids can play a part in it by the time they reach 5th grade. But typically it's the principal who oversees that at the elementary schools. And this is their fund balance. It's aggregately between all of our school buildings. So they had $463,000 at the end of the year last year. Transportation Vehicle Fund. The Transportation Vehicle Fund houses money that we receive from OSPI for the buses that are on our depreciation schedule. And we receive that revenue in July each year. And we use that to purchase buses. For the 21-22 school year, we purchased $314,000 worth of buses. However, we had 2 buses that we did not receive. And so we should receive those this year. And but we knew that when we budgeted, so there's capacity for this year. But we've got 2 buses on order or close to being delivered. And then I know that Transportation Department is putting together another bus purchase for next year. And the goal there is to get as many of our buses on the depreciation schedule so that our state funding increases to keep our buses more modern. And that is the end. Sorry, I was trying to stay under an hour.
I have one question, but it's not actually related to this. So, we're going to the WASDA conference this week, and they have some classes. One is called Onboard Finance Deciphering District Budgets, and the other one is, where did it go? Onboard Finance Tackling Financial Soundness. So we hear a lot of
Are they being taught at the same time?
no,
Then you can go to both.
I can go to both, but what I want to know is, what do you want us to learn? And how are you going to know that we learned it? And I know you're not teaching the class, but what would you?
Well, financial soundness is a long-term budgeting strategy, which is better than, giving you long-term scope. That will help us develop a plan or a plan financially as to where we want to be when. And what your definition is of financially healthy and stable as we go through times that are uncertain. Yeah. Tackling the budget, you'll learn what revenue and typical revenue sources are, Washington State funding. That's what you'll learn. I'll know you learned it because you'll have the answers to these questions when we start talking about budget. You're welcome.
Mine's more of just a comment. Did somebody else want to go? Okay. I just want to thank you for always just taking the time, being patient with us, explaining everything. You go through such detail and you make it pretty in your PowerPoints and super easy to understand. So I just appreciate that, the fact that you give that extra 10%.
Thank you.
Well, and Brenda, I do appreciate you so much. You are just amazing at your job, and you are profit level interpretation of what's going to happen and do a great job at keeping us on the right track. And I do appreciate that because our financial stability for me is one of my biggest priorities. And obviously our student success and all of that is huge, but this is, if we don't have the money to fund anything, then we're kind of in a deep hole. I think that for my board members though, fellow board members, I want to just encourage us as we look at as we talk about the levy dollars as well, how this impacts our budget moving forward, to look at things. We cut a lot of things to make things happen for this year, getting ready. So what does that look like for us and our priorities at refunding some things that we've cut? Probably things that we need to bring to the table as well to help our team build that new budget back. Just thoughts that I have for you guys to help you, Brenda. Budget committee.
I have a comment, actually it's a criticism. There's a couple of slides here that don't have the same font. They're difficult to read. I find
Chuck.
that it's a continuing
You're out of order.
problem.
Point of order.
Just a comment.
We love you, Brenda, so much. And I speak for Chuck when I say that.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Brenda, so much. We have, moving on, item 5 on our agenda, we have no new business for tonight to have to vote on, so we're going to move on to item 6, which is our superintendent consent agenda. And I was so riveted by the financial report, I need to get that on my screen. All right, is there a motion to approve the superintendent consent agenda?
I move that the Monroe School Board of Directors approve all items as listed and presented in the superintendent consent agenda dated November 14th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion to approve the Monroe School District Board of Directors consent agenda, all items listed and presented in the superintendent consent agenda dated November 14, 2022. All in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes 4-0. Moving on to the board, item 7, which is the Monroe School Board consent, the board consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve it?
I move that the Monroe School District Board of Directors approve all items as listed and presented in the board consent agenda dated November 14th, 2022.
Second.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to the Monroe School District Board of Directors approve all items as listed and presented in the board consent agenda dated November 14, 2022. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 4-0. Board comments. Item 8. Anyone like to go first? I know you got stuff to say, come on.
Just some miscellaneous items. I went to the Veterans Ceremony in Sultan. Carolyn Neslick, Representative Carolyn Neslick, who was here earlier, spoke. Sam Lowe and Russell Wida. I always find these interesting, the Monroe Community Coalition. We have a Zoom meeting once a month. And this month it was about opioid impact and prevention, and also about substance abuse and Narcan training. I was pleased that Monroe school employees attended that. So Maddie Lauder was substance abuse and prevention. Sharon Liebner from Park Place Middle School, Student Community Connection. Tammy Amber was counselor at Park Place. Amber Mether, student support, and Kathy Jackson, family engagement. We had a report on fentanyl. This has been a concern of mine for a risk at the school. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin. One thing they said is not to refer to it as an overdose, but say opioid poisoning. And the reason is that it could be something accidental. They were talking about a pill, if you break it in half, it looks exactly like some common pharmaceutical pills. but one part of the pill could have a deadly dose, the other part couldn't. So there is overdose situations, but my concern is that somebody's just gonna take a pill under peer pressure and they're gonna have a fatal dose of that. There's a new drug, Exaline. It's an animal tranquilizer that's being mixed with fentanyl, and that the Narcan is not effective when this fentanyl is added to it. So that's a problem. We have, at our Rotary meeting, we had the district governor speak. Raja, he's from southern India, and he had 3 goals of peace, mental health, and inclusion. To let you know that Rotary, our district is 50-50, so half of it's in Washington and half is in Canada. And during these tumultuous times with war looming in different regions, in the world, I think it's nice to have a discussion about peace and not towards conflict. He talked about mental health in his area, about domestic violence on the rise, and about inclusion. I brought up a point that typically disabled individuals are not members of Rotary. And the keynote speaker is going to, at the district conference in the spring, is going to be a blind individual. They're going to be speaking. At the WASDA conference, we're going to have a special meeting of the legislative representatives on Thursday. And Dan, I read, I looked at that fragrance point that you sent out. So then I hit the hyperlink for the teacher handbook. And then I went to acronyms. So this is how I think. So I went to acronyms, and as you know, I've always complained about you guys using this language. Monroe has 68 acronyms in Monroe alone. And at the WASDA conference, I was given a page, I believe there's over 200 acronyms. So when I brought this along for a cheat sheet, when you guys throw around acronyms, I try to remember what they are. So that is an observation I wanted to share, other than a font.
All right, I can go next. Director Whitfield, I know we've been in a couple of those coalition meetings together, and I appreciate that you attend those. You can order naloxone or Narcan for free in Washington State. And a lot of people recommend having it in your first aid kit, keeping it in your vehicle. There are also a lot of community service organizations who will take donations of. So even if you just order the free Narcan, and then you can donate it to a group to provide support for people in the community. So I wanted to talk about, I got to go to a couple of assemblies, and I haven't been to an assembly in a long time, so it was wonderful. I went to the Equity Academy Assembly at Hidden River Middle School. It was really loud when we first got in there, but it was really neat to see the students engaging with each other, and just learning how to communicate with each other, how to be mindful of each other. And then I also got to go to Maltby Elementary's Veterans Day Assembly, which had me weeping through most of it. It was an incredible assembly. One of my kiddos was up on stage and sang and played guitar, and they have never made it through being on stage through the whole thing before, and they did it, and it was wonderful. But also, it was just so cool to see the whole school together. And I talked to our principal, Christine Hillstad, after, and she also was just sort of overwhelmed by how wonderful it was to see the entire school, all of the students, all of the staff and teachers and paraeducators. And then we also had, and this is our family's bus driver, Mr. Dar, who came and shared his experience and career a 30-year career in the Air Force. And he had the entire transportation team come with him. Like they all rode the yellow, oh, he didn't know. Oh my gosh, they were all there to support him. It was the coolest thing ever. And he was so excited that he still fit in his dress blues. He looked fabulous. But it was just a beautiful celebration. And then the last thing I want to do is also to just acknowledge this community's participation in the election. I think it is remarkable, and I think we should really be celebrating our voter turnout. It's incredible to me that we had over 76% of voters who participated. That's just wild that that our levy had the most participation of any campaign in the entire county of Snohomish. I think is so cool and such a tribute to our community and how involved we are and engaged with each other. And I just hope we continue that going forward. And I want to just thank everybody for participating. Thanks.
Okay, mine's not as long. First off, I didn't get to go to that assembly, so I enjoyed hearing about it. I actually came down sick, and so I was a little bit bummed. But I did get the opportunity to go watch our football team at districts at Monroe Stadium against Liberty, and that was quite a game. It was a little bit of a nail biter, but I enjoyed every minute of it, freezing out in the cold with those high winds. But it was so much fun, and just to see our students out there doing something that they love and excelling on that football field. I know what that feels like as a student athlete, so really appreciated that. And then I also had the opportunity on Friday to go to the wreath laying ceremony that Mayor Thomas put on. Really enjoyed listening to him speak, and I think one of the most important takeaways was the fact that he doesn't want that to be forgotten. We don't want to forget where we have come from, the struggles that we have gone through, the progress that we have made, and the people who have fought and died and given their lives and their service for us to be America, to be what we are. We owe them a debt of gratitude every day for putting their lives on the line. And I don't ever want to forget that either, because freedom is not free, right? There's always a price or a cost that has been paid. So, but I really enjoyed that. I welcome anybody to come out the next time, especially to Memorial Day in May. We'll be doing it again. It was wonderful to hear Tanya and Tammy speak about the monument and what it meant, the significance of it, and just how the Monroe School District is intertwined with that, and the part that our students played, I think, is so important, which is why I encouraged them to come speak today. So yeah, that's all I've got, but I'm super excited about Wednesday and going to the WASDA conference. I'm excited to spend time with my fellow board members and Dr. Larson, getting to know everybody better and just becoming more educated so that I can be up here and I can serve everyone in this community, especially our children, to the best of my ability. So thank you.
I will pick it up with the Veterans Day wreath laying ceremony. It was beautiful to be there with other elected officials. And one of the things that was a suggestion, and I want to throw this out for our board as well, maybe a participation, is creating a QR code that they can install into the an image into the marble slab that is there for the memorial, that links community members to an online drive with all of the photographs and all of the data and the newspaper articles, because of all the students have compiled so much. And even if it's something that either the city does or because our students have done that the school district does, it allows them to link to some sort of an archive file. Jesse, he's nodding over there. Just the way our school can partner with our community in that kind of a way, it's not a hard thing to do. And then one of the other things is, and I know Molly, I'm surprised you didn't mention it, but becoming a Purple Heart school. Oh, yeah. And we are now a Purple Heart city. We're second city. We're second. Snohomish beat us, but our signs are bigger. So, and I actually talked with, I believe he's the chapter president for our VFW. Is it Derek? No, Drew. He said those signs cost $65 each. And so I think it would be really great for our school or our district as we are looking into that partnership with our community. I know that we're already looking at that as well, of doing something with at least with our district building as well, to honor our veterans and those who've been wounded in service as well. And I do want to thank our community members. I have family members and my closest friends who have served and serve in the military, some during wartime as well. Our staff members, Director Whitfield, who is also a veteran, thank you for your service. And Director Whitfield, I think that you should just be fine with all of the acronyms since you are part of the United States Army. And as a veteran from that, come on now, I know they're full of acronyms there. So there's this is just nothing. So one of my best friends is a captain, about to be major in the U.S. Army, and he talks to me as if I'm in it. I'm like, it's a whole other language. So anyway, I got to go to, I do need to apologize to Principal Judy because I was also invited to go to the assembly and I could not make it work. I just don't have enough hours in the day, and that is also part of the reason with my schedule. I will not be at the WASDA conference, so I am excited to see some of your notes. But I did get to go in the end of October to one of our mandatory trainings that all of us have to go to, which is a two-step process. One is it is called the Introduction to the Commitment to Equity that the Lake Washington School District hosted for us to do for schools in the area, and sat at a table with other school board directors who are all very close to us, we'll say that. And one of them is a former central office administrator who retired from her school district, and then after retiring joined her board and is now the president of her board, and has done equity since, before any of us were even born. And she made the comment, because we asked in a reflection at the end, what was something that you were worried about? And we shared some of our comments because we shared it at the end. And she said, if I see that fence image one more time with the boxes, because it's been done to death. And not that it's not an important thing, but she was hoping to come to something that is fresh and different and helps her grow, because she's seen it sliced 1,000 different ways. And she was pleasantly surprised. Honestly, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I was a little wary at what we were going to work on, but the onboard trainings that they do for WASDA are very high quality and they're very engaging. They did a great job at having us connect. And really what I loved is we talked about defining equity in our districts, because it has become such a heated term. It has been, I think, hijacked to a degree of just the ability to give everybody that fighting chance to succeed. Everybody deserves that. And how do we create space so that everyone has the opportunities to succeed? And really the idea of loving our students. And for me, it really hit at home, just my educator heart, my dad heart, of just making sure our students are set up to be as successful as possible. And so it was really great. A lot of the conversations that we had, a lot of reflective stuff. And so I know that that's part of the WASDA training as well. So for those of you guys who are going to go through that, I really enjoyed that. And there was actually quite a few people who were there. So I wanted to share on that. I was excited about it. And then my notes, that was everything. So
When are we gonna see that Purple Heart resolution?
November 28th, so our next board
Okay.
meeting.
All right,
Okay.
awesome, thank you.
That's exciting. All right, that being said, we can move on to agenda item 9.01. Meeting is adjourned, and it is at 7:15 p.m.